sharing life, delivering truth, and giving hope. For 40 years, AM 1110 and FM 107.9 K-Wave, I'm Bob Shaw. Today is K-Wave's 40th anniversary. We are celebrating all day, including right here on Come Together Live, our daily devotional here on K-Wave and streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. And here to celebrate with us, share hope and encouragement from the Word, Pastor Brian Brodersen, Pastor Emeritus at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. And you can also catch him on Pastor's Perspective every weekday afternoon at 3, on Back to Basics every morning, where he shares wisdom and insight from the Word. Pastor, good to have you. Good morning.
Well, thank you, Bob. Great to be here. I think this is my first occasion to be on Come Together, so it's perfect to do it on the 40th anniversary.
It's only appropriate. That's absolutely for sure. What do you got for us this morning, Pastor?
Well, I was thinking about this wonderful theme of God's faithfulness, which is, really what we're celebrating today with our 40th anniversary. And, there's probably one passage in Scripture, songs have been written around it, but it speaks directly of that. And it is found, it's actually written by Jeremiah, but it's found in Lamentations. And these are the words. And of course, the background is Jerusalem has been destroyed. The people have been carried away into captivity, but God has given them promises that they will return. And so Jeremiah writes these words. He says, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed or totally consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And I think of the many, many times, that we have sung songs in the congregation about the faithfulness of God, and probably the most well-known one historically would be the song by Fanny Crosby. Great is thy faithfulness was the title of the song, and people might not know, but Fanny Crosby, lived back in the 1800s, and she was blind, but she was responsible for writing some of the most amazing hymns. But she penned this. She wrote these words: "Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. All I have needed, thy hand has provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me." And I just want to encourage all of you today to just reflect on the faithfulness of God. So we're doing that at K-Wave today with 40 years. My wife, Cheryl, and I, we are coming up on 45 years of marriage, which is, pretty wild. And we just recently stepped back from 43 years of leading pastorally. And I just want to testify today to the faithfulness of God. God, as Jeremiah said, and as Fanny echoed, great is his faithfulness. He's so good, and we can trust him. And one of my favorite passages in the New Testament is speaking about the Old Testament saints. And it says concerning them, our perspective on them, it says, the things that were written before were written for our learning, that we, through the patience and the comfort of the Scriptures, might have hope. So we have an entire book, the Bible, that is one story after another of God's faithfulness. And when we look back at the lives of, say, the patriarchs, for example, we look back at the life of Abraham, that's not just, just information that was written down just for a historical record. That was written down so that we can know the faithfulness of God. So you look at Abraham's life, or maybe you fast forward through Jacob's life, or you look at somebody like Joseph, whose life seemed to be going in the wrong direction. But actually, it was all part of God's plan to bring him and the people of God into the fullness of the purposes that he had for them. There was at one point where in the story of Joseph, his brothers had betrayed him, sold him into slavery and all. And at the end of it, he says, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. And I think as we look at our lives, there are moments where it seems like, man, this is bad. And why is this happening? And God, where are you? But just keep trusting, because you're going to come through the other side and you're going to see, just as Jeremiah said, great is your faithfulness, just as Fanny Crosby echoed. And so, like I was saying, as I look at, Cheryl and I look at our 45 years of marriage and our 4 kids and our coming up on 7 grandkids and 43 years of pastoral ministry, all of those things. We've had our ups and downs for sure. We've had our challenges, our struggles, our difficulties. But I'm here to say today, with Jeremiah, that God is faithful. One other quick thing. Last night I was able to attend the world premiere of the film, The First Hymn. So a friend of mine, John Dixon, there was a little scrap of papyrus found in Egypt that were the lyrics to a worship song from 1800 years ago. And it wasn't just the lyrics, which are amazing, but it was also the musical notation. So what they've done is they put together a song, Chris Tomlin, Ben Felding, this beautiful song, and the essence of it is this very thing. And there's one line that says, "You are the only giver of good gifts." And that the reason it says only is because Zeus was declared to be the giver of good gifts, but the Christians were saying, no, actually, the God who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, he is the giver of good gifts. And Fanny Crosby in her hymn, that's what she is echoing when she says, there is no shadow of turning with thee. All I have needed, thy hand has provided. Great is thy faithfulness. She's drawing that from, she's connecting the Lamentations passage with the words of James. And so, hey, know today, God is faithful. And just rest in that and know that in his time, he will make, as he promised, all things beautiful.
Thank you, Pastor. Appropriate theme for our 40th anniversary. We're going to continue this conversation and all the 40th anniversary festivities on Facebook and YouTube, so please join us there and here on K-Wave. As we grow older, we learn things. We accumulate wisdom. Wouldn't it have been nice to learn those things earlier in life? Pastor Greg Laurie passes along those things he'd tell his younger self next on A New Beginning. All right, so Pastor, you've been around a while. I mean, and you're married to Cheryl, who is the daughter of Pastor Chuck. So I'm sure you know a thing or two. And I was talking to her earlier about how he started K-Wave and how he kind of drove him down there to the radio station. They didn't know what he was doing. And he said, well, this is going to be the radio station I'm going to start, which is, that was 40 years ago. That was back in 1985. I think I was 17 at the time and had no aspirations to radio, but here we are, right? Both together talking about K-Wave's 40th anniversary. So when you first got involved with K-Wave, how did that come about? And how did Back to Basics come about?
Yeah. So, Cheryl told that story. I was eavesdropping on her conversation with you. We lived down in North San Diego County, and of course, Pastor Chuck and Kay lived up here in the OC. And Chuck called us one day and said, "Hey, do you want to meet us at San Clemente is kind of a middle point. You want to meet us there? We're going to check out this radio station that we're buying." And so we went, and it was in the Ramada Inn, right off of the 5 freeway there. So we went and checked it out, and I thought, oh, wow, this is amazing. I'd been pastoring for a few years now, my own church down there in Vista. And so, once the station was purchased, Chuck just said, what, you want to do a radio program? And I was like, well, you know, I don't know. I've never thought about it really. And the word for today existed at the time, so
Yeah.
he had been on the radio stations around the country for quite a while. But for me, it was a whole new adventure. So you start thinking about like what would that look like, and
Yeah.
taking some of my teaching from my Sunday ministry at Vista, and yeah, so we did it. We put a program together, and coming up with a theme like the word for today, for example. It's like, oh gosh, what a great name for a Bible teaching program.
Yeah.
So what would I name my program? And thinking about it, I kind of just thought about just who I am and the way I approach the scripture. And so the back to basics thing really resonated with me, because that's kind of what I do, just kind of taking people back to the scriptures. And there was a great song at the time by a friend of mine named Benny Hester. He had an album that was called Back to Basics, and the song just kind of seemed to say everything that I was feeling. So I asked Benny if I could use the song for the teaching program, and he gave me permission to do it. So that was how we started. That's how Back to Basics came into being, and that was back in 1985. So we were,
Wow.
yeah, right in the early stages of KWAVE. We came on with a weekend program, and then went eventually to 5 days. Yeah.
Yeah. You were there pretty much since inception, which is pretty awesome. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's a great title, because I think as believers, sometimes we tend to convolute the word and make it more complicated than it is. So to go back to the basics is a good thing for all of us, I think, every day when we.
Yeah. I've heard that used in so many different contexts, and we got to get back to basics in this. And I think, yeah, that's where we're at.
But you're also on Pastor's Perspective, which is kind of like the pastor, Ask the Pastor program every weekday afternoon at 3
Right.
here on K-Wave. Has that been challenging? Because I can't imagine, because sometimes it's like you get these questions thrown at you and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
where did that come from? But has that sharpened you?
Well, sharpened me. Yeah, at one point, maybe, the older I get, you kind of get a little bit dulled as time goes on. But, a funny story about that is I remember years and years and years ago listening, when I was very young, I would listen to the Bible Answer Man. And back in those days, it was a man named Walter Martin. He was the one who, started it. And I remember listening, and Walter Martin was brilliant, but he was very gruff, and he was very, he wasn't a real gracious host. If you
Right.
asked a stupid question, he would let you know that was stupid. And I remember one time listening to him and thinking, I just had this thought cross my mind, like, wow, if I ever did a program like this, I would be nice to people. That was the one thing that I thought for sure.
Yeah.
So, it came about through the process of time that, Pastor's Perspective was the new name for the program that used to be To Every Man an Answer. And we took a brief break some years ago. Pastor Chuck thought, oh, maybe we don't need to carry on with this. We had some changes in the leadership. And I said, no, I think this is a great program. We need to keep going, and let's rename it. And I came up with the name Pastor's Perspective.
Oh, you did?
I just thought, well, that's what we're doing. We're giving our perspective on things. So, yeah, I've really enjoyed it. It's not, I've talked to so many of my friends. It's not something that everybody can do. Some people, are great preachers. They're great on many levels, but they feel super intimidated when they get behind a mic with a question coming up, So I'm just wired a little bit differently. So it's never really, some guys will come into the studio with their computer and they got it all there. And that's great. I mean, that's who they are. I just walk in with my Bible and just figure, okay, we're just going to see what the Lord does.
Yeah.
And he's been faithful in that area too, I think. I mean, for the most part, I think I give, pretty good advice. Occasionally, probably not so much, but but it's been good. And, I've been 25 years, started doing it when I came back to Calvary back in 2000. So
yeah, you're right though. It is not for everybody. Even on Come Together Live, we've had pastors that are kind of like deer in the headlights kind of thing. So I know what you mean. Yeah.
And Cheryl does her program with Women Worth Knowing, and she's had some gals on occasionally where it's such an amazing story, and she's so excited about it, and then they get in the room and they get behind the mic and they just freeze up.
Yeah.
I'll ask her, how'd the interview go today? And she goes, it was rough. I had to just kind of keep trying to pull stuff out of them.
Yeah, and that's hard as a host, too, because you're sitting there waiting for an answer, and then, oh, man, dead air's not good. So I have to get in there and talk to them and ask questions and pull that stuff out. So do you have any favorite, I mean, you've been on for 40 years, so I'm sure there's some stories that kind of stand out to you. Any favorite K-Wave stories, a moment, or maybe a testimony?
Yeah, many. I mean, I have literally met so many people the ones to me that are the most exciting are the people who come to faith through K-Wave. They stumble upon it. I've had so many people tell me, like, hey, you led me to the Lord. And I'm like, really? When? How? And, it's through the radio. But the story that I think stands out to me, I love this one. There was a guy who was visiting and rented a car and got in the car, and K-Wave happened to be on the dial in the rental car. And so as he was in town for a week, he's driving around and he's listening the whole time. He just thinks, okay, this is interesting. These guys are talking about God and so forth. And anyway, by the end of his stay here, he received Jesus.
Wow.
And then he wanted to let us know, that he had become a Christian through stumbling upon the station and listening and giving his life to the Lord. So that one always, and that's not the only one like that I've heard, but that one particularly, because I went on to know the person and kind of get a relationship with them and stuff. So that kind of stands out to me.
Yeah, but that's what it's all about, right? I mean, it's about the Great Commission, and
absolutely.
Sometimes.
And,
go ahead.
And the faithfulness of God. The one other thing I would say, and Bob, you've been around K-Wave for quite a while now too. But one of the things for many, many years that I was praying for and kind of looking, how can we get the signal into LA in a stronger way?
Yeah.
And, we tried back probably in the 90s, we tried some different routes and the doors always shut. And I just felt like, man, somehow this has got to happen. And I had no idea how it would happen. Well, a couple of years ago, the opportunity came along for us to purchase the AM station finally at an unbelievably wonderful price, in comparison to what you would think you would pay for an LA radio station. Yeah. And man, the Lord just said, okay, now's the time. It's been literally decades of praying for that and hoping that would happen. And to see it all come together was just amazing. And so so when I was a kid, I used to listen to KRLA, which had these
rock and roll oldies.
Yeah. And so I think, man, we are on what was formerly KRLA. So that's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And now we're everywhere. I mean, when I do the weather now, I can say Santa Clarita, So.
Yeah, I know. And, the app too. I mean, I tell people all the time, like the app is the greatest thing in the world. And I have friends around the world that, it's so funny because they'll say, oh, yeah, on the pastor's perspective, the other day you said this or that. And I'm thinking, wait, you're on another continent. Oh, yeah, the app. That's how.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, and that's the wave, pardon the pun, of the future. So, and it's so great that we're on AM 1110 right now. So, getting that word out to as many people as possible. Well, Pastor Brian Brodersen, it has been a pleasure and a long time coming. So we're grateful to have you on and grateful for your service at K-Wave over the years. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks so much. And come together live with us tomorrow. We have a whole lot more encouragement and hope from the Word at 8:25 this morning. God willing, we'll be here. Hopefully you are too. Until then, KWVE family, God bless you. Peace and joy.